Hi, you're listening to It Happened to Me, a rare disease and medical challenges podcast. The mission of our podcast is to support you, our listeners, and to create community as you confront the toughest challenges in life. All of us will experience health hardships. The real question is how we adapt. That's the focus of It Happened to Me, which wants to help you overcome limitations and live a full and satisfying life. Drawing on their own health challenges, co-hosts Kathy Gildenhorn and Beth Glassman interview guests who share stories and research to help you succeed in the face of difficult health obstacles. It happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.
Today, we are joined by a powerful advocate and storyteller, Elizabeth Ansell, founder of #NotJustFatigue, a nonprofit initiative bringing urgently needed awareness to a syndrome referred to as ME/CFS. Elizabeth is a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania with a background in literature and TV production. She developed ME/CFS as a teenager and has been bedbound since 2016.
Despite these profound challenges, she launched #NotJustFatigue in 2024 to educate the public and the medical profession about this chronic and debilitating illness. It is a condition that often develops after an infection, causing debilitating fatigue, brain fog, and post-malaise. In today's episode, we'll hear about Elizabeth's personal journey, discuss the medical and societal misunderstandings around ME/CFS, and explore how advocacy and storytelling can bring change to even the most invisible illness. Elizabeth, welcome to our program. We're so happy you're here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And to our audience, we will have a link to #NotJustFatigue in our show notes so that people can get more information about that or any other resources that Elizabeth feels might be helpful. They'll all be in the show notes to this episode. So welcome, Elizabeth, from my side of the fence. Let's start at the beginning. Please share your personal story with ME/CFS, and when did your symptoms first begin? How was your diagnostic journey?
Yeah, of course. So I had some bizarre health problems since I was about 14. Like I would go to my pediatrician and she, had no idea. And even through college, like I would go to doctors and they did not know either. So I had these kind of bizarre health problems since I was about 14 to 26. And then obviously I was able to live with those issues. Like I knew something was wrong, but I didn't know what it was. And then when I was 26, things started to change. I started getting problems sleeping, joint pain, muscle pain, brain fog, like writing the wrong words down at work, or the wrong numbers, like a lot, like tingling in my fingers and toes. And at that point, I thought like, I need to see like a neurologist or something. Like this is very strange. And at that point, I started seeing doctors in New York, and what I experienced was really nothing short of crazy. I mean, my internist sent me to like doctor after doctor after doctor in like every single field. And I mean, they either didn't know or tried telling me it was psychosomatic, or I was actually misdiagnosed, I think a total of like 9 times.
Goodness.
Which is just absolutely wild. So I got sick enough to the
Elizabeth,
point.
can I ask you, what misdiagnosis did you have? They think it might have been.
There were a variety of things that really didn't line up. I think the first misdiagnosis what used to be called Churg-Strauss syndrome, which I think is now called something else, which was, again, at the time, like, I didn't know anything about medicine or like science. And so I kind of just thought, like, you go to the doctor and they tell you what's wrong and they help you. And
Right.
my view is as simplistic as that. So I was kind of just going along with it, but things were not getting better. Like, they were getting absolutely worse. And it got to the
Oh
point
dear.
where I had to quit my job. My last job was at ABC News, and I had to quit because I'd gotten so sick at that
Oh,
point.
what a shame. Okay.
Yeah. And so at that point, most people with ME/CFS, they consider themselves mild, moderate, severe, and very severe. At that point, I would say I was moderate, which that goes to say, like, even people who are mildly or moderately affected with the disease, it's still very disabling. So I kind of got to the point where I thought, well, doctors can't help me, so
Oh,
I'm going to have to figure out what's wrong with me myself.
how
Um,
tragic.
I had not paid attention to science since I was about 16 years old. Like, honestly, like, it was just not like at the time, like, my interest level. And so I'm sitting there, like, Googling things, like, literally reading like biology textbooks, like printing out journal articles. Cause I'm like, I mean, what am I supposed to do? Like, no one can figure out what's wrong with me. And after a couple months, I came up with this thing, or like found this thing called ME/CFS. And the hallmark symptom of ME/CFS is not fatigue. Obviously, fatigue is a symptom, but the hallmark symptom is something called post-exertional malaise. And that means that your symptoms flare with any sort of physical, emotional, or mental exertion. And so I came across that, and I remembered this time I had walked over the Williamsburg Bridge, and afterward, I got back to my apartment and I was like bright red and my lymph nodes were throbbing and I had a sore throat and I couldn't leave my apartment for like 6 weeks.
My goodness.
Yeah, so that's a very what we call like a crash. Like, there's like payback for this exertion. So
I
I thought
see.
of that and I said, this fits exactly what I've been experiencing. So at the time, there were two ME/CFS doctors in New York. I went to both of them and they both diagnosed me. And then since then, I've been diagnosed by other ME/CFS specialists, either in person or via telehealth over the years. So, yeah, it was a crazy process, but ultimately definitely glad to have a diagnosis, because when you don't have a diagnosis, you're just kind of floating around and like
Sure.
very confusing.
I found it liberating to finally get a
Mhm.
diagnosis, and you know that you're not imagining these things.
Mhm.
They are legitimate.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, ME/CFS is often described as an invisible disease. How
Mhm.
would you describe what it actually feels like to live with this condition day to day?
Yeah. So like I said, I had been mild and moderate, and there are up to 60 reported symptoms, which kind of vary person to person. But again, everyone has this hallmark symptom of post-exertional malaise.
Mhm.
Um, Unfortunately, in about like April 2016, I had this major crash. It's really unclear if I like got another virus or what happened. And I went from being moderate to suddenly like I could not take care of myself. Like, my legs felt like jello. I felt like I could hardly walk. I was like winded just walking around. My arms, I couldn't even lift above my head. And I thought to myself, like, I need to get to my parents' house right now. Like, something
I'm
is.
so sorry.
So,
So my parents have moved around a bit, but at the time, and now they're living in Connecticut. So I came right to Connecticut and I went into a bedroom, and before I knew it, I was literally in the bed in the dark, because light and noise, any sort of stimulation is like triggering for people with ME/CFS. So I'm in the dark. I literally could not even move my finger. My parents had to call
Oh,
24-hour caregivers, like, immediately, and they would, like, move me, or, like, the only thing I could do is, like, sip a smoothie a little bit, but, like, that's about it. And so I couldn't speak, I couldn't move, and that's the
oh my
thing with
goodness.
ME/CFS, like, there's no one to call. Like, there's no FDA-approved treatments, there's no biomarker, nobody knows the exact mechanism of the disease, and so you're just kind of on your own, and, like, I'm lucky enough to have family who's supportive of me, but there are plenty of other people who are not in that situation.
Imagine what it would
Yeah,
be.
it was very dark, and there are a lot of people with ME/CFS, not just in this country, but around the world, who are in those states, who might even be on a feeding tube or something, and I think about them every single day, because it's like, it's truly, like, a level of suffering that I didn't even know existed. Like, it was so bad. Fortunately, after about 2.5 years, I improved to the point where I am now, which is, I can, like, I'm not light or sound sensitive anymore. Like, I can talk, like, all day, and, like, move around the bed, but I haven't walked in 9 years, and I still have full-time caregivers. Obviously, I'm hoping to improve more, so I'm definitely hopeful about the
Do
future for
you
that.
do physical therapy, or is there
So
any?
that's the thing. Like, I have a physical therapist that I do, like, lymphatic massage and, like, range of motion stuff with,
Right.
but I really can't exert myself in terms of my muscles, like, really at all, or else, like, suddenly I'll have the disease explode because of the
Oh,
post-exertional malaise symptom.
right. Wow.
Wow. Boy, that is quite a story. From any sort of exertion, I guess the fear is that you would go back to that very dark place.
Absolutely, and it's
This,
definitely not just a fear, like, it's
uh
very much the reality.
The reality. Yeah.
I see.
Everyone with
Wow.
this disease, they have what's called, like, an energy limit, and everyone's energy limit is different, and you kind of learn by trial and error, like, where is my energy limit? And, like, for right
Uh-huh.
now, my energy limit is what I said, like, I can, like, talk and move around the bed,
Right.
I can go outside in a reclining wheelchair, like,
Mhm.
I've connected with people who they'll say, like, my son has been like this on a feeding tube for years, or,
Oh
like,
my.
my son has been like this and he can only move from the neck down. And again, like, just because of the lack of awareness and the lack of education with this disease, people are kind of suffering, like, in their homes behind closed doors.
Oh.
So it's certainly not rare. And that's a point I want to make too. The CDC currently estimates that there are 3.3 million Americans living with ME/CFS. Independent research suggests it's as many as 9 million Americans. The issue is that 90% of people with the disease are not diagnosed. So most people who have this, they have no idea that they have this. I mean, it was like me for years. Like, I had no idea, and there was no, mainstream doctor telling me that. People just don't know what they have.
So, Elizabeth, you've been in bed since 2016. Can you give us an idea of what your daily routine is?
Yeah. So again, those 2.5 years at the beginning were
Right.
very dark, and it was just like
You had the light
surviving.
sensitivity.
It was
Uh-huh.
really just, I mean, every second, like, was just, like, about, like, survival. And I had an internal monologue the whole time, and I thought to myself, if I ever improve, like, I am speaking about this disease, because, like,
Uh,
like, this is crazy. Like, this is a crazy experience. Like, to go from living, like, a relatively healthy life with, like, a job and friends and, like, all of that, to go to this, and there's just simply no medical, like, structure for this, like, whatsoever. I mean, it's pretty wild. And so I had decided, like, I would speak about it, and I did improve, which I'm very grateful for.
So was the improvement just from a matter of time, just happened? Is it something a treatment helped you? Or is it just a luck of the draw?
Yeah, so I want to be clear about that. Like, there are 0 FDA approved treatments for ME/CFS, despite it affecting millions of people and not being a rare disease, and it being so disabling, which again doesn't make sense. But that's the current state of things, unfortunately. That said, I mean, patients do try like a lot of off-label things that have been
Sure.
known to work for certain people. And, either from talking to other patients online or talking to ME/CFS doctors, which, I mean, there are very few doctors in the whole country. Like, I speak about them like there's a lot, but honestly, I think there's less than like 20 or something. But yeah, so that doesn't mean that something will work for someone, but that's frequently what seems to happen. People will try these off-label things, but there
Sure.
are 0 approved FDA treatments.
Do friends come over to the house to see you?
Yeah.
Are you able to go out and socialize in your wheelchair?
Yeah, so I think when I was very sick, I couldn't see anyone.
Right.
And then when I had improved a little, I think I only had the capacity, I think I saw like 2 friends in years. I
Oh,
would see
wow.
my family, but like the act of seeing friends is just so more complicated. But so I had been in the bed and then I started being able to go outside in a reclining wheelchair. And so I went outside for the first time. I mean, it was like one of the most moving moments of my
oh, sure.
And
um
aides help you get in the chair and out of
yeah.
the
Yeah.
perfect. Okay.
In fact, I think the first time I might have gone out on a stretcher, but then we like got me a reclining wheelchair. But I remember just going out and seeing the sunlight, like, because I had been inside for that long,
Oh,
which is, again, a common experience for people with ME/CFS. I just saw on Twitter literally this week, like, someone posted, like, same deal, like, someone brought them out in, like, a hospital bed or something. It was the first time they had been out in, like, years, and other people were commenting, like, "Oh, I remember doing that," like, stuff like that. So that
Wow.
happened for me, and then I started just going outside in my reclining wheelchair, and I definitely started seeing more friends just, like, on the
yeah.
patio and stuff, and, like,
Right.
on just, like, laying on the patio furniture, and that's kinda where I've been at since, like, 2022. So anytime I see a friend, I mean, I'm ecstatic because it's so
Yes.
funny, like, I'll be talking to them and it'll almost be like I forget how sick I am, like, it
Yes.
transports me to, like, almost
Right.
another
Sure.
place, like, another
Yeah.
time, but then I come back in here and I'm like, "Oh,
You're
okay."
exhausted.
Yeah. So then
Do
afterwards, you have
you
to rest, yeah.
do you listen to music or do you listen to books or do you read a lot of books or how do you pass the
Yeah,
time?
where I'm currently at, like, I do not really have noise sensitivity or light sensitivity, so I listen to music all the time.
Uh-huh.
I make entirely way too many playlists. It's very fun for me, like, music has always been a huge passion of mine,
Uh-huh.
and I couldn't listen to it for years when I was so, like, sound and stimulation sensitive, so that was definitely really exciting.
It is exciting.
So I do
Yeah.
that. That said, I read articles online, but in terms of reading a book, I couldn't do that, like, that would be too much mental energy. So
Oh.
it's all about like, like I might do something for like 15 minutes and then I might rest for 45 minutes, or I might do something for 2 hours and then rest the rest of the day. Like, it's again all about like pacing and like knowing your own limits.
Limits. Yeah.
And that's not something that's easy to do, but it is something because I have been struggling with this disease for so long. It's something that I have learned over the time, but that doesn't mean it's easy whatsoever. Like, I still do have crashes sometimes.
So what led
I'm
you to
sorry.
start? What led you to start? Not just fatigue. And what
Mhm.
was the reaction when you first launched it? And then how do you know what your capacity is to work and get it
Mhm.
done? I mean, what's the balance here?
Yeah. So, like I said, I had told myself, like, if I ever improve, like, I'm going to speak about the disease.
Right.
And obviously so much of this is influenced by my own experience, and it was just so frustrating to tell people about this disease because they Google it and they see this like chronic fatigue syndrome thing, which is absolutely ridiculous given how disabling this disease is. Like they think like, oh, you're just tired, or oh, like you're lazy, or like, oh, you're just like chilling in the bed. And I'm like, that is not my experience whatsoever. It was very frustrating to not have a diagnosis because you have nothing to really tell people. And, I
Right.
heard like crazy rumors about myself, like, and I was like, I'm just sick.
Oh,
I don't have a name for it. But even then, when you did have a name for it with this disease, like there's just like kind of this stigma or misunderstanding about it. So that's kind of was my experience. And like I would send my friends like articles about the disease to try and explain it to them,
Right.
or like documentaries, and like the feedback would constantly be like, well, like I can't really get through this, or like, oh, like this is very long-winded. And so I kind of came up with the idea to make a website, and our website is www.notjustfatigue.org, to make like a creative, engaging website with like a lot of like short form kind of content offerings to educate the general public on
Mhm.
MCFS.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I thought like, like if I'm having this problem, I'm sure a lot of people
And
with the
people are.
disease are having this problem. And like, wouldn't it be great to just have some place that's aimed at the general public, like kind of this content that's like presented in a digestible way, that you can just send them to that website, and like they can go and they can watch a video, or they can read our Q&A, or they can look at our photo documentary series with quotes, or look at our interactive historical timeline, whatever they want to do. We have a lot on there. And, like through that way, like they can understand the disease,
Mhm.
ultimately hoping that understanding kind of leads to empathy, like for people with the disease. So
Yeah.
that was really where I started, and we launched it March 1st, 24. It took me 6 years in bed to complete the whole
Wow.
project, which is crazy. But again, like I have energy limitations. So, with keeping that
You
in
have to
mind,
respect
not
that.
that
Yeah.
crazy. Yeah, again, because it's like my first priority is ultimately like my health. Like I can't do anything if
You go,
like my
girl. That's
health's
it.
like, so we launched it, and I didn't know like how it would go, but it was really well received. I mean, I've gotten countless emails from people like telling me how useful it's been, especially our kind of short form like video documentary series that's like 10 videos on key aspects of MECFS. People really liked and were sharing a lot on social media. And kind of from there, we decided to, because we're a 501c3, we kind of decided to jump into advocacy using those same tools.
Excellent.
We have like a bunch of up and coming projects that I'm super excited about that are going to come out. Great,
Elizabeth, did this help? Is there also a support group out there?
So there are a lot of support groups in terms of
Uh-huh.
like things online. Like I know, a lot of people are on Twitter and connect with people that way. People connect on TikTok. People connect through Facebook groups. I think that's one of the biggest places. Like people
Okay.
connect on forums. And for me, like those have been super useful over the years.
Okay.
Like I would say like people with ME/CFS know the most about the disease. So
Sure.
like
Yeah.
in connecting with someone who also has the disease, whether they're in this country or Germany or wherever they are, I've learned so
So
much from the
much.
other
Yeah.
people with the disease. Like that's where I've learned the most, hands down.
Well, back to not just fatigue.
Mhm.
While you seem to be raising awareness among patients that are inflicted with
Mhm.
MECFS, what about the medical professionals? Because there
Yeah.
seems to be tremendous lack of awareness there. You've been
Yeah.
able, and hashtags aren't going to reach the doctors, they'll reach the patients. And so, how is it going with the doctors and the medical
Yeah.
professionals?
I mean, So the target audience has always been the general public with notjustfatigue.org, but that's certainly a great point. I mean, a huge issue is that the medical community does not know about this disease. It's rarely taught in med schools. It's rarely in medical textbook. And even if they do know something about it, they just think it's fatigue, which as we've discussed, that's not what it is. It's a complex neuroimmune, neuroinflammatory disease that affects all parts of the body. So, yeah, I mean, there's a tremendous need to like educate people in the medical field about it. Again, like we're very focused on the general public right now, and I'm not saying we might not do something in the future, but there are like two other big CFS organizations that are both fantastic, ME Action and Solve ME, and they definitely do things like that because like I said, 90% of people aren't diagnosed, which is tragic. So obviously things definitely need to change in this area.
Elizabeth, can I ask you, you were diagnosed, if I can remember your story, 20, you were out of college,
Yeah.
but symptoms were starting when you were a youngster. And so I wonder, that pediatricians, and we all love our pediatricians, but
Well,
their focus is on healthy checkups.
yeah.
That's really, really what
That's
they
true.
do.
Yeah.
And so when presented with something as different as this is, it would be probably out of their wheelbarrow. And I'm thinking about, if I'm wondering do you know when it usually the onset is? Because I just can imagine pediatricians, they're just really going to be stumped by this presentation. And so I can see why, this would go undetected for years. And I'm not faulting pediatricians because we love our pediatricians, but this isn't really their focus. They're really into the healthy checks and your shots and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's certainly not just pediatricians who aren't aware of this. I mean, it's
Right.
also like, your PCP or anyone really. Disease affects people of all ages,
Okay.
races, and socioeconomic groups. It truly does not discriminate. It's been reported in kids as little as 5 years old. And, also like there are people in their 70s who come down with it. So, it's very sad all across the board. I remember on one point I talked to someone on the phone who he was a teenager. He had been bedbound since he was a child. So that was very, very upsetting for sure. Because it's like, I mean, you've hardly lived at all, and then you're relegated to bed with this disease that there just is pretty much no infrastructure for. Yeah, that's definitely a huge issue. I mean, the biggest thing that we really need, like, is, like, government-funded clinical trials so that there can be treatments for this disease. Also, finding a biomarker or at least having, like, tests that, suggest a disease. You can, like, order a panel or something like that. And there's really nothing regulated or, like, out there now that's, like, kind of, like, official. So, yeah, it's a really tough situation. It's 2025, and it's hard to believe that this is really happening. If you look at our past section on our website, it's this animated historical timeline, and it kind of explains why, like, decade by decade, year by year, like, why we're kind of in such a tragic state with this disease right now. Obviously, we can't change the past, but we certainly can work today in the present to change the future.
Absolutely. Well, you alluded to some of the myths or misconceptions. So let's open it up and talk about what you've encountered that you would like to change.
So, I mean, the biggest myth is that it's just like fatigue or something like that, which is why I named it, not just fatigue. Like I wanted to confront that head on and kind of reclaim it in that sense. So that's why our website and our organization is named that, because again, when people Google that, they just cannot seem to get away from it. So that is definitely number one. I would also say number two, like people are just totally unaware that it is like this disease that presents with like over 60 symptoms, and that the hallmark sign is post-exertional malaise, which, as we've discussed, is like the severe worsening of symptoms with any sort of physical or emotional or mental exertion. You'll experience something called a crash, which could last for days, months, years, be permanent. So you definitely want to stay.
It can be permanent.
Yeah, like, for me, like I had this crash in 2016 and I went from moderate to very severe. And I mean, it's now 9 years later and I've kind of gotten back to severe, but like I certainly haven't gotten back to where I was. I hope it's not completely permanent, but I mean, that's the thing. It's like some people stay the same, some people get worse, some people improve.
There's a stigma, I would imagine, associated with this. Can you talk about that, both societal and in the medical community?
Yeah.
People think you're faking?
I thought I had like this crazy story of like what had happened to me from, like being misdiagnosed so many times, or people thinking it was psychosomatic, or like friends not believing me, or like hearing like
Right.
rumors about myself, or
Oh.
like people in your life like treating you so badly with the disease. But then I get online and I connect with other people with the disease, whether it be like over the phone or over social media. And like, I thought my stories were bad. And then I hear their stories. And not only do they have those exact same stories, but like theirs are even worse. And I'm like, this is wild, like it's so wild. You hear absolutely the most wild stories ever from really people struggling with this disease in society, because the same way like MS or something is very much accepted as this disease that has awareness, it's deserving of funding, that affects this many people. And yet we have this disease that's a common disease, that's kind of this neuroimmune, neuroinflammatory disease that like it just isn't getting the funding and it isn't getting the awareness. And it's very frustrating, definitely.
I'm sure. Now,
Yeah.
your background, you are so amazingly articulate, and your
Yes.
background is in literature and TV production. And how have those skills influenced the way you tell your story and build awareness?
So it's interesting. I've been doing creative projects like pretty much my whole life. I was an English major with a cinema studies emphasis, and I took a lot of photography courses. And so then when I to New York, I wanted to work in nonfiction content and like TV. So I worked at some production companies and I worked at places like Showtime and but I was always very much like behind the camera. Like I did not like this like I didn't want to be in the photos. Like I didn't want to be on camera. And sometimes people would try to get me to be on camera and I'd be like, none of that. Like I just didn't like it. And so that was really a conscious decision for me. Like I told myself I would speak about the disease. And then when it came to doing this project, I kind of consciously decided like I really need to tell my own story to kind of get like these stories out there as part of it. And originally, when we started the project, I wasn't planning on filming myself, but on the website, there is a 15-minute short film about my family and like how we've dealt with the disease. So that was definitely like not like something going on in my previous life, but something that I kind of decided to do like since I've been sick and since I think it's so important to get the word out about this disease.
Now, what do you think are the biggest barriers to diagnosis and treatment of ME/CFS? Is it doctor awareness? Is it societal interest, scientific availability? I mean, you've touched on all this, but when you put it all together, what do you think are the really big barriers we can start with?
And the biggest barrier is that it just hasn't been a priority for the government, for the NIH or the CDC. And like that is, reflected just in the dollar amount that they're giving the disease today. Because for so many decades, there was this idea it was psychosomatic or something like that, but that is not the case anymore. Like no one is thinking that, but we still just do not have the dollar amount required.
Do they acknowledge that it's neurological? Yes. It's not psychological?
No. Yes. So 2015, the government put out a report that basically concluded ME/CFS is a physiological disease that affects millions of Americans that we know far too little about. And then from then, NIH director at the time, Francis Collins, wrote a blog post about it. They started 3 ME/CFS NIH funded research centers. Unfortunately, I think one of them wasn't renewed. So starting last year, there were 2 NIH funded research centers, one at Columbia and one in Cornell. So yeah, it's a tough situation. I'm not sure this year how much they're spending on it because that kind of comes out after the fact. But traditionally, in recent years, it's been around $13 million a year. And you compare that to MS, which is getting $122 million a year. And you're kind of you look at the number of people affected, you look at the fact that there's no available treatments, you look at the fact that there's no infrastructure and there's just nothing one can really do. You look at the fact that, it's just not even if you aren't even touched by the fact that there are people suffering horribly with no help. It's also costing the US economy billions of dollars a year, just in terms of lost wages and taxes and disability and that type of stuff. So it just doesn't make sense. So the biggest thing that we need to do is to increase the dollar amount on a federal level and make this a priority of the NIH and the CDC. And that's something that we've been advocating for. Our recent thing that we've been advocating for this year is to fund the ME/CFS research roadmap. It's something that the NIH put out in 2024, but it had no funding attached. And it basically kind of paves the way for a way forward with this disease and government funded clinical trials to find FDA approved treatments to improve people's quality of life. So we're trying to get that funded. And people just, don't have treatments for. And we know that ME/CFS, 80% of people with the disease report having an infection before coming down with it. So we know it's usually post-infectious.
There's a term, medical gaslighting, and I wondered if you could speak about that and the delay of diagnosis.
Yeah, again, I had seen doctors and they had told me we don't know what's wrong. But when things had really heated up for me when I was 26 and I saw countless doctors, it's safe to say I had some very negative experiences.
I'm
I
sorry.
think, again, I don't think it's
I'm
that
sorry.
uncommon when you actually start to talk to people. But I think the worst was I saw this neurologist and, he asked me questions, did a full neurological exam, the whole thing. And afterwards in his office, we're sitting there. And at the time I was, I want to say 27. And he looks at me and he just goes, "Do you have a boyfriend?" And I was my head, I'm why does that matter?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm well, no, not right now. He's women your age should have a boyfriend. If you had a boyfriend, all your symptoms would get
go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Uh,
just looked at him like dumbfounded. Like
yeah,
I
like
was
get a
like
life.
I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Wow.
I had a similar experience, the same boyfriend question with neuroimmunologist, just a little different variation of it. And yeah, so I guess that's the first time I was experiencing like such overt like
Hmm.
sexism and gaslighting and like all of that. I kind of wish I could go back in time to those moments. Again, I have many stories. I think that's like one of the worst of them and be like, like I don't know what I would say, but at the time I was almost frozen. Like I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
I didn't know what was wrong
Yeah.
with me. But yeah, it's really hard to deal with. There's a lot of kind of emotions to process with experiencing such a horrible disease, but being told by almost like authority figures these ridiculous things.
Well, it's basically showing too some degree of ignorance on their part that they just don't know what's going on, that they would be able to say something so kind of universally off the mark. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing valid about that whole perspective relative to what you're experiencing, not relative to their psyche, but relative to what's going on in your body.
Yeah.
Well,
Good question.
Most of them were men, but
There was a woman?
no, I think I had women just like not believe me or like just like dismiss it kind of. But
Mhm.
like I'm talking about the absolutely outrageous statements. Yes, they
Mhm.
were coming from older men.
From men.
And again,
Mhm.
at the
Wow.
time I was like 26, 27.
Wow.
I'm
Wow.
very sorry.
Well, going back to earlier, we were speaking about advocating and how important that is. And it really made me form a question. How do you manage advocating for change when your own condition limits your energy and your ability to communicate? And how do your audiences adapt to your limitations? Can they do it by Zoom? Can you go in a reclining wheelchair to something nearby? Is there something, because that visual, I think, would be so educational to your audience. If there's any way to get the visual, whether you're just sitting up in a reclining wheelchair or being wheeled in a reclining wheelchair, however it comes, that visual might help people get more of an educated concept as to what MECFS is.
Yeah. Obviously it's really difficult to have such a small energy limit and, to advocate. I would say that again, like you always kind of have to put your health first. If you're not feeling well or, you're experiencing symptoms, like definitely like you just can't do it. Like that's kind of it. In terms of me personally, I mean, I've learned to kind of work within my energy limit. And then in terms of advocating, all the meetings I do with congressional staffers are on Zoom or Teams. I mean, the idea of going to Washington or even going to someone local's office, like that absolutely is not happening, like for me, energy wise. So I'm definitely super grateful for technology.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are downfalls of technology, but with this disease, I think it's great because it does allow people who are bedbound or homebound to be able to get on these meetings. We've done these meetings with a lot of people in a lot of states from around the country, and they get on too, whether they're homebound or bedbound, or, maybe they're better than that. I don't know. And so we can connect directly with those congressional staffers. Technology is also great too, because it's like I mentioned, like you can connect with the MECFS community online in like a second, and like you can be like talking to someone in San Francisco who has a very like similar health story to you and who's maybe tried some off-label treatments and has some thoughts on them. I've connected with people like in Germany or Australia. So, I mean, before technology, like there's just no way you could do that. It would just be like you in your room. the community is really phenomenal, like in that aspect of it.
How can loved ones, friends, caregivers support someone that they love that's come down with ME/CFS? Is there any advice that you'd say was particularly helpful or understanding?
I would say the biggest thing is believe them. You know,
Mm,
like if someone tells you they're sick, believe them. Like even
mm.
if they don't have a diagnosis, even if they have strange symptoms, and because like nobody's asking for this. And once they do have a diagnosis like ME/CFS, take the time to really research their condition because it'll avoid you, you know, saying like maybe the wrong thing or like something wildly incorrect, like, oh, you'll get better soon. And it's like, well, not exactly. So I think educate yourself so that you can be more understanding and empathetic about it. Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, like this disease has, hurt me in so many ways, but the ways that some people have treated me, either by their actions or the things they've said or just simply not believing me, I mean, that has hurt me just as most. So, or
Yeah.
just as much. So, there's a lot of trauma in that, absolutely. And so I would say the
Hmm.
biggest thing you can do is believe them, learn about them, and have empathy.
That
So,
makes so
Elizabeth,
much
what
sense.
advice would you give to someone who's just been diagnosed?
If you're able, find a ME/CFS specialist just
Hmm.
because, I mean, your internist is most likely not gonna know about this. Unfortunately, it's if you're able because, there's not that many, so it's like location based and it's also, there are financial like issues with that as well. And then I'd say the biggest thing is honestly, like, probably get online and get in the Facebook groups and get on Twitter and get on the forums and connect with other people with the disease. Because, like I said, like, I have learned absolutely the most about this disease from other people with the disease.
So, support groups, you would say, would be very helpful too, then.
Yeah, yeah, definitely just connecting with people with the disease, listening to their stories, listening to any advice they have. I have done so much of that, both through this project, hearing people's stories, but also just for my own kind of personal life. I've connected with so many people who've, like it's been definitely really great to connect with the community.
I would imagine therapy would also, it broke my heart to hear that how you've been hurt. And I would
Mhm.
imagine therapy would also be something that might be helpful.
So there's kind of a mixed thought on that, like because I think there are a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists who are completely misinformed about this disease. Again, because of the reasons we've talked about.
And think it might be more psychologically
They
based.
just yeah,
They
or
don't get it.
like they don't understand like the challenges associated with it and like you'll be doing more just educating them than like
I
Right.
see.
talking
I
about
see.
anything. So a lot of people have had incredibly negative experiences.
Oh, I'm sorry to
That
hear that.
said, there are obviously some people who are therapists or psychiatrists who are very understanding and are very well versed and are very helpful, but it's just a matter of finding them.
I
Yeah.
think that you need to really be on the hunt. I guess you would have to interview someone quite carefully before you would commit to a practice.
Yeah. I mean, I've even seen like in support groups, like kind of like lists of doctors people put together, like
Yes.
in different
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
fields, like
I was
safe
thinking that.
gastroenterologists or like
Yes.
safe therapists or like safe neurologists, kind of. Because obviously, I mean, this isn't necessarily the only health problem you might have. Like, you might
Right.
need to see like people in medicine in different fields, but like you don't want to go in there and deal with the like, well, this isn't real, or like, have
Hmm.
you tried like running every day? It's like, what?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they just don't get it.
Yeah.
But I've
So-
got to say, Elizabeth, we do not want you to overexert yourself.
Yeah,
I
no.
must say thank you. You have been outstanding. Thank you for taking the time, all this time, to come on It Happened to Me today. And we appreciate you shedding light on living with ME/CFS and on educating people about the condition and what it really is. And we thank you. We thank you.
No, thank you so much for having me on. Definitely happy to talk about ME/CFS and try to help raise awareness for the disease. It's really been awesome to talk to you all.
It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of It Happened to Me. We encourage you to learn more at ithappenedtomepod.com. Please use the contact form on our website to submit your guest suggestions, comments, questions, ideas, and feedback for the show. You can also email us directly at ithappenedtomepod@gmail.com. We would really appreciate it if you can leave us a 5-star rating and review on your podcast app like Apple or Spotify. This helps others in the rare disease and medical challenge community find us. It Happened to Me is created and hosted by Kathy Gillenhorn and Beth Glassman. I'm Keira Deneen from DNA Today, and I serve as our executive producer and marketing lead. Amanda Andrioli is our associate producer. Ashlyn Anokian is our graphic designer. And remember, it happened to me. I'm not alone, and neither are you.